Welcome to my PowerPoint about weird Hearthstone archetypes. Let's skip over Death Knight and Demon Hunter for now because, let's be honest, they don't have that many cards. And let's talk about Druid. So Druid has a very fun one in Clown Druid. This was playable during Darkmoon Fair when Carnival Clown and Yashara the Defiler were added to the game. The whole idea is you would play Survival of the Fittest on your deck, and then you would buff a lot of minions. You would have minions that you would pull from your guardian animals that would also love to be buffed from Survival of the Fittest, etc. So you'd get that out as soon as possible, and then, because Survival of the Fittest also corrupts your Carnival Clown, it would then fill your whole board with 8/8s or 12/12 clowns. You would then play another set of clowns, and then Yashara, and then you would have all of your strongmen, which if you don't know are 0 mana 6/6s once they're corrupted, as well, which again would then gain the buffs from Survival of the Fittest. You'd keep having continual high pressure boards on your opponent until eventually you won the game. It was actually really fun to play and really interesting for its time. A deck like that probably could not exist in today's game. It just wouldn't really function because, decks are all about killing you. And you can't really survive until like turn 9 or turn 10 to play something like Carnival Clown, even in Druid. It's kind of really awkward because you'll just die over the top to today's game. Not really, not really fun, is it? If you did have the pleasure of playing this deck, everyone remembers it. It was quite fun. Sometimes you would even run Cthulhu the Shattered in this deck as well as like an alternate win con if you just didn't think that the clowns were good enough, and it was really fun. I do like Clown Druid. If it did ever come back, that would be nice. We got a callback card to the Carnival Clown in Wizbang's Workshop. I can't remember what it's called. It effectively has Corrupt, but not the keyword. It just has the effect. It's miniaturized, and it'll deal 4 damage once it's corrupted. It's a very fun card. Then we have Hunter. So back in the day, I could not tell you when this existed. There was a bug that made it so Cthulhu would always hit the integer cap, which is 60, when it was applied a buff. So you would play something like Beckoner of Evil, which would then give your Cthulhu plus 20/20. So you would then deal 126 damage to your opponent's face. I know I wrote 128, it's not right. With Maximum Blastenheimer, which would then fire the Cthulhu at your opponent. This deck was incredibly fun. It was a very awkward bug, and it was just not intentional. But it's really funny because Ixar, who was at the point a dev on the game at the time, used this on ladder, and it's a really funny moment to see a dev use a bug on ladder. Even if he was just testing it to see what was happening, it's still funny that we did catch that instance. Someone screenshotted it, and it's gone down in infamy in Hearthstone that, dude, even the devs are abusing bugs. Oh my gosh. Then you have Mage. So back in Forge of the Barrens, Deck of Lunacy was printed in Darkmoon Fair. But when Forge of the Barrens came around, they had a big rotation and the introduction of the first core set. This meant that there were very few spells in Hearthstone. You didn't have the really bad classic pool. You didn't have 6 expansions to dilute the spell pool. You only had 4. So what that meant was you could play Deck of Lunacy and increase the cost of spells in your deck by 3. So if you had 7 mana spells, they would always turn into Nagrand Slam, which if you don't know is the 10 mana hunter spell that is summon 4, 3, 5 Cleft Hoofs. They attack random enemies. Tsunami is summon 4, 3 6s that also freeze and attack random enemies. And you had Survival of the Fittest, which we talked about earlier. So you had incredibly powerful 10-drop pool. You had incredibly powerful options at other mana costs because, again, it was they had already introduced Demon Hunter into the game, so you had Demon Hunter spells, so you had even more spells to choose from. You had the core set, which only really had powerful cards, didn't have bad classic cards, and of course you had a lot of powerful spells to choose from. It was genuinely a very strong deck. Deck of Lunacy Mage was the best deck in the game at one point. It truly was something crazy, and it was fun. If you ever played during this era of Hearthstone, yeah, RNG is really annoying to play against, blah, blah, blah. But it is fun to play with. It just is. Like, they wouldn't keep printing it if people did not enjoy playing with high RNG decks like this. And it just is fun. It's really fun to play with. So you had Deck of Lunacy. It eventually went to 4 mana. And at 4 mana, it was still actually quite fun to play. It was not as good, of course, because you're not playing Deck of Lunacy on turn 1 or 2, and then, completely changing your deck. But you could still have a lot of really fun games, even with Lunacy at 4. Obviously, this card isn't really playable in Wild. There's too many spells for this to ever make any use of anything. It just doesn't make sense to run. You'd rather just play like Puzzle Box Yogg Saron and then do the exact same thing effectively in your game. Then we have Paladin. So back in 2018, during Roscon's Rumble, the meta was significantly weaker. Roscon's Rumble didn't really introduce that many powerful cards for most classes. Paladin overall got probably the best set from Roscon's Rumble. It got Timeout. It got... oh gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head. It got The Call. It got... it got Travala. It got a lot of good cards. It got Flash Heal, things like that. All of these cards, overall they weren't that great, but because of Timeout, you could stall enough turns to play your Uther of the Ebon Blade, and then play your Youthful Brewmasters on your Horsemen. Hero Power, play Brewmaster, Hero Power, play Brewmaster, or play Zola, until you could garner three different Horsemen in your hand. Sometimes it was a bit RNG reliant, I will be honest with you. And then you would play all three Horsemen, Hero Power to get the guaranteed fourth Horseman, and then you'd win the game. This deck actually was genuinely a powerful meta deck at the time, which is crazy to think about, that a meme deck like this, that people have memed on for years, was genuinely quite a good deck 6 years ago. Then we have Priest. So although it's now a staple in today's game, 3 years later that we have Shadow Priest, at the time it was very weird. It was different. It's not something you'd ever seen before. Priest had always had, the terrible lesser heal hero power, and it always has been considered one of the worst hero powers in the game. And then they said, screw it, we'll give you Dark Bishop Benedictus to give you the Mind Spike. I don't remember what the actual name of the hero power is called. It's the Void form hero power. So you deal 2 damage instead. That alone probably wouldn't have been enough to make, Shadow Priest really anything special. But then they printed Void Touch Attendant. Void Touch Attendant at the time is probably one of, if not the best 1-drop ever printed at its time. Obviously we've gotten some better ones since then, but it does say a lot that Void Touch Attendant really was able to spike the win rate of Shadow Priest. It eventually got got support in the mini set with cards like Defiant Sleeper, and then all the way in March of the Lich King got even more support with like Undead Priest that really synergized with Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest has done a lot in Hearthstone. Dark Bishop Benedictus has completely revamped Reno Priest and made it so you're always running Benedictus. Holy spells have been pretty much unplayable in Hearthstone, especially in Wild, for a long time. There's only one deck that can really make use of Holy Spells in Wild, and that's Miracle Priest. And Miracle Priest has been pretty good, don't get me wrong, but it's not using Holy Spells because they're Holy Spells, it's using them because, well, it's Power Word Shield, and Divine Spirit, and Inner Fire, and cards like that. Shadow Priest, I think Shadow Priest is personally overall good for the game. I like that Priest has, more aggressive options. I don't like the fact that Shadow Priest is just, directly better than every Hunter deck. You have a better hero power, and you have better cards, and it's really not a fun time, I will be honest. I will say, I understand why some people don't like Shadow Priest. Dying on turn 3 to a Priest deck is really not fun. It doesn't do that consistently anymore, because it's less about Pirate high rolls and more about, you get your Acupunctures in the late game for burn, or you would have had your Thirsty Drifters during Showdown in the Badlands, things like that, or Zarimi, if you're really spicy, you're running Zarimi at one point. So it is a little less blowout focused with pirates as it used to be, but it's still something. Then we have Rogue. So for Rogue, I'm talking about Coin Rogue. We've had 2 expansions of dedicated coin support for Rogue, not in a row because we had Whizbang's Workshop in the middle, but still. We had Showdown in the Badlands, which gave us cards like Wishing Well or Dart Throw, and then we have Perils in Paradise, gave us cards like Meadow Detector or O Manager. Getting these coins is really nice. Coins are very powerful. 0 mana, gain 1 mana, on the spot is genuinely a powerful effect. The issue is that, the dedicated support for the coins is Wishing Well. And Wishing Well, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting card. It's 5 mana, 0/7. After you play a coin, get a random legendary minion from another class and set its cost to 1. It's not the least interesting support for coins, don't get me wrong. It effectively is, once you get to 5 mana, as long as you have coins, you'll have a bunch of 1-cost legendaries. It's just very RNG reliant for a card like this that is a little expensive. Getting to 5 mana and playing these coins does add up on your costs, especially for Rogue, which, typically wants to be doing better things than just playing a 0/7. But it's fun. Wishing Well Rogue is genuinely very fun. Getting random legendaries is a fun thing. It's fun to do in this game. So I do understand what they were going for. It's just really, really awkward that, the coin cards have been better in Paladin and Mage. Metal Detector is really good in both of those classes. You even run Instrument Tech and Mage specifically to get Metal Detector because you want coins so consistently for your Skyla. In Paladin, your coins get doubled up on your Lanessa turn, which is also really powerful, doubling up on your Lanessa. You can play, like, Own Manager is better in Paladin than it is in Rogue. It's just really awkward that all of these coin cards are significantly better than other classes, mainly because Rogue cards don't need to be ramped. You know, they're cheaper, they're less efficient on average, so they are cheaper, and, you know, the coins ramping into them doesn't matter as much. It is awkward, but there's no way that we won't get some kind of, like, coin payoff card eventually that really ties together the coin rogue archetype, so I am looking forward to that. Then we have Shaman. So Shaman has had Spell School in the past, during Sunken City. It just was really bad. But Razzle Dazzler getting buffed from 7 to 6 has been night and day for Shaman and Death Knight, don't get me wrong, but this is about Shaman. It went from being pretty bad and you mainly just played, like, hooky, and then, like, if you were playing Spell Schools, it's just like, oh, because, you know, Cabaret Headliner can do a lot of discounts, to being, okay, well, now we want to be playing a lot of Spell Schools so we can ramp our Razzle Dazzler and get a lot of powerful 5-drops. I had a game where I hit 2 Leroys and a Doomguard from a Razzle Dazzler where I only had 3 guys from my Razzle Dazzler. My opponent conceded instantly. If you hit like a Leroy or a Doomguard and they have charge, your Razzle Dazzler is just like, your opponent's going to be so upset. There's a lot of really powerful 5-drops in Standard currently. Probably will get worse as time goes on. They'll probably see, oh, Razzle Dazzler's a little too strong, so let's print some not that great 5-drops. This happens all the time where they have a card that, like, is benefiting from, you know, like, mana cost-based minions, like your Piloted Shredder. They started printing really bad 2-drops that, you know, were battle cries or not great to get off of Shredder to nerf Shredder. They'll probably do the same thing for Razzle Dazzler, where they'll be not that great of 5-drops in Standard, that are just like battle cry based or what, or like don't have that great of stats, so that you don't really want to be playing Razzle Dazzler as a way to nerf the card, which is a little awkward when they do stuff like that, but I don't know. Razzle Dazzler has been really fun to play with, I will be honest, and it's just a weird thing. Shaman usually doesn't just like summon a lot of minions all at once like this. Like, when Shaman would get big minions in the past, it would either be, okay, they summon like a wide board of kind of small minions and evolve them, or they would just, I don't even know, they would have a lot of totems, things like that. Shaman has never really been this, like, mid-game monster class that drops, like, a Razzle Dazzler, you know? They have Evolve, which is pretty good in the mid-game. They have Shutterwalk, which is really good in the late game, but, you know, this, like, Razzle Dazzler kind of effect is not something that Shaman's really had in the past. Then we have Warlock. So, Imps are one of the only self-tribes that doesn't rely on the same token. What I'm calling a self-tribe is things like Treants, Silverhand Recruits, Jades, Astral Automatons, etc. Except Imps are kind of like Whelps. Whelps and Imps are the only ones that I can think of where they have a separate tribe, which is dragons and demons, but because they are Whelps or Imps, they, you know, synergize specific cards. Something like Big Ol' Whelp, which is the 5-mana 5/5 dragon that draws you 1 card as its battle cry, does give Raid Boss Onyxia immune. Raid Boss Onyxia, if you don't know, is a 10-mana 8/8 that has immune while you have it's 10-mana 8/8 with Rush, summon, you know, 6 2/1 Whelps, and then has immune while you control a Whelp. If all those 2/1 Whelps die, but you have something like Big Ol' Whelp on the board, which is, you know, a 5/5, it will still have immune. Or if you have Splish Splash Whelp, etc. Of course, you know, the Whelps haven't really been used as much as they could have in the same way that Imps have, because Imps have cards like Impending Catastrophe, Flustered Librarian, File Library, which I haven't put on here, but it's a 2-mana location that gives a minion +1/+1 for each Imp you control, and then Imp King Rafam. Imp King Rafam is actually a really interesting card because of the fact that it resurrects Imps. You might be thinking, oh, you know, most Imps aren't that big, right? You have something like Flame Imp, which is like a 3/2, or you have the new card Employee of the Month, which is also a 3/2. But Dark Alley Pact, which is the 4-mana spell that is summon a demon with taunt with stats equal to the amount of cards you have in hand, that's an Imp. So, if you have Dark Alley Pact and you get like a 9/9 with taunt, you can resummon it with Imp King Rafam. That's actually what people do. Sometimes Imp King Rafam is ran in even Warlock as a way to, you know, summon back Imps. But we're talking about Imp Warlock in general. Imp Warlock was actually really, really strong in Nathria, and it was pretty good for its time in Standard. It's genuinely been a really, like, interesting archetype that allows them to expand more on, like, these self-tribes that they do have, but don't really... how do I put this, aren't really exemplified very often. Like, yeah, Silverhand Recruits and Treants get a lot of support, but stuff like Jades, Automatons, things like that usually never get support again, or like direct support. They'll maybe get something, right? Like, they'll maybe, like, Automatons will maybe get more ways to copy them or whatever, but like, we haven't had Jade cards printed outside of Caverns of Time in, what is it, like 8 years? The Jades were from like 2016. So yeah, imps we'll always get more imps. So this like kind of tribe archetype will always probably get better, and eventually they'll probably redo it. I don't see a world where they wouldn't bring back imps in some way. It's just been fun. I don't know. I like it. It gave Warlock in a zoo archetype that it hasn't had in a long time. Just really fun. Then we have Warrior. So this one's really new. It's actually from the mini set, and we have Punch Card Sulthray's Warrior, or Gonk Warrior, whatever you want to call it. It's really, really fun. You play Sulthrays, and then because of Punch Card, it gives your hero Cleave. Cleave does apply to Sulthrays, so you'll get 7 attack just from the Punch Card. You can then play cards that give you attack, either like if you have Odin, you can gain armor, or you can give your weapon attack, or you could play, oh gosh, what's it called? Heroic Strike, I think, which is to 2 mana to gain 4 attack. I think that's what it's called. And then you gain a lot of attack on your turn, and then because of Sulthrays, you can Cleave, kill 3 minions. You could do it again to give you more attacks, but you'd probably, don't want to waste the durability because Sulthrays is still 4 attack. Then you hit your opponent in the face a bunch of times. It is, of course, similar to Gonk the Raptor, which, is a Druid deck that we had in the, not had, but is a Druid card that you could play with in the past. There have been, like, different Gonk Druid decks that have popped up. They've always been terrible. They're never good, but you can play it. This is really fun. A lot of lists I've seen have been putting it in a Skipper Warrior shell because Skipper Warrior is just so unimaginably, like, consistent. It's one of the most consistent shells in Hearthstone. It's usually just, it doesn't have that good of a win condition to make use of it. If you haven't seen anything about Skipper Warrior, I've talked about it a trillion times on this channel. Magma Rager Dex is the main guy who's really innovating Skipper Warrior through Wild that I see all the time. Follow him on Twitter, look him up. He's great. But yeah, I love Skipper Warrior. I love all these. And then Punch Card Sultray is just a new way to play the deck. It's really, really fun. But yeah, that's going to be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And guess what? Starting on Sunday, there's going to be a test. You heard me. You better study up. I'm not going to reveal what this means, but you guys better study up. If you enjoy, leave a comment down below about what you like. Do you like any of these archetypes? Do you dislike any of them? Do you wish any of them would come back? That's usually what I like. I like when stuff comes back. I don't know. I don't like when things go to rot and just like aren't played again. But yeah, that's gonna be it for me. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Shadows are rising again!
Darker than they've ever been. As evil descends from the skies, the world cries out, how will we survive? Out of the hall of explorers, and up from the dusty tomb. They grab their whips and fedoras. These legends of the past know exactly what to do.